Hi, and welcome back to Convergently Speaking. This week on the podcast, the topic I want to explore is intuition and the idea of having an intuitive awakening. Now, to set the scene, I want to be clear that when I use this term, I'm not referring to a sort of esoteric knowing, a higher order spiritual gifting, maybe something you'd see with an empath or other psychic type abilities. I'm using the term in the sense that Carl Jung used it, and in the sense that the Myers-Briggs typology now uses it, which was built on and developed out of Carl Jung's work. The training I did around Myers-Briggs and who I got my certification through is a group called Personality Hacker. Go Google them, look them up. I highly recommend their stuff. And the way that they speak about intuition is they speak about it as advanced pattern recognition. Now, I'm not sure what you think of when you hear advanced pattern recognition, if it immediately resonates and makes some sense, or if you really have no idea what I'm referring. Because this isn't language that we traditionally hear in society on a daily basis. And part of the reason for this is that statistically, only about 1 out of every 4 people is intuitive, in the sense that I'm using the term. So advanced pattern recognition, which is just trying to get at what is happening with this intuitive process, isn't something that is a mainstream idea or understanding in society. For most people, sort of 3 out of 4 people, the world they're operating in is quite concrete. For a sensor, which is the other option other than being an intuitive, they prefer concrete, tangible, provable data and experiences. They like to have a physical and visceral experience with the outside world, and that's the way that they learn and grow and develop their ideas and what they believe to be real, to be true. I often use the example that if you were to go to a theatre to watch a show and one person was intuitive and the other person was a sensor, the sensor may comment something such as, "What a beautiful red velvet curtain they've got up the front at the theatre," and talk about and make comment on the actual curtain that's actually there. And then the intuitive might respond, acknowledging the comment and that kind of thing, but saying, "Oh, I wonder who's behind there. I wonder what sort of performers or actors or stage has been set up behind there." Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the sensor wonders that too, but the reason I use this example is it gives you a launching off point for understanding where the focus resides of an intuitive versus a sensor. The intuitive loves to live in the world of speculation and wondering. They're quite happy to make guesses and leaps without too much information. Whereas generally speaking, a sensor isn't going to find speculation without any factual basis. Well, probably not interesting, but maybe also quite silly, or at least just like a waste of time. The thing is that wherever we focus our attention is what develops and grows. And so an intuitive, as a child, as a teenager, their speculation and consequently their ability to see patterns may not be that great. But as they have more experiences and gain more data on certain people or certain institutions or certain types of products or ideas or whatever it is that they're aiming their intuition at, they actually develop this repertoire and sort of like accumulation of patterns that they can then pull from. Now, the thing for me to acknowledge here is that all of us are intuitive. We all have intuition as part of our personality. So we all do this, and sometimes it gets called stereotyping. Now, while stereotypes obviously aren't always correct and accurate, they come from somewhere. They come from a general pattern that has been observed. A good example of this may be the Greek or Italian mother or grandmother that when you go around for a meal or even just to visit, they're constantly offering you food and won't take no for an answer if you say that you're full. There's just a massive focus with making sure that you're feeling welcome and you don't leave hungry. Now, of course, not all Greek or Italian mothers or grandmothers are like this, but there's a trend of this culturally. This is a stereotype that we have. Now, intuition isn't merely stereotyping. We're talking about a focus that someone has within their life, a temperament, and almost like a continuous impulse to look for and find patterns as their primary or one of their main ways of operating in the world and understanding the world, making sense of the world. But the thing about intuition, as I alluded to before, is that it's not all that common in society. And as such, society, generally speaking, is set up to cater more for those that are sensors, that are orientated toward the sensory world, more than the abstract world. And this has created a phenomenon that is known as intuitive blending. And intuitive blending is when someone who is an intuitive tries to appear and act as if they are a sensor. They create and embody a persona that's not totally authentic to them, or it's partial. So it may be authentic, but it's only a partial expression of who they are. And as we know, when someone's not acting out their true and authentic self, over time there can be a level of dysthymia that takes root. If you don't know what dysthymia is, it's basically a low level, low grade version of depression. It's just a subtle but fairly continuous dissatisfaction with life and lack of emotional fulfillment. Because when any of us try and be someone that we're not, we're out of alignment with ourselves and we're not thriving. We're not operating as our best expression of who we are. So this all leads me to the idea of intuitive awakening. And the way that I think about this is it's the process for a person when they realize that, there's actually something temperamentally different about me compared to a lot of my peers and just a lot of society in general. And usually this is when someone takes a Myers-Briggs personality test or reads a book on the topic or has some exposure to this idea of intuition. Maybe for some of you listening, this is your first time being exposed to this as a concept. Now, I don't want to get super technical here with Myers-Briggs, but just for context, there are those that have intuition as the number one part of their personality, and we have sort of 4 pieces or what are known as cognitive functions. So there are those that have intuition as their number 1 cognitive function, and there are those that have it as their number 2. But in both instances, these people would be considered intuitives. The first 2 parts of our personality is the primary way that we show up and understand the world. Now, for me as an INFJ, I am intuitive primary, which means I'm kind of unapologetically and unavoidably intuitive. For a person that has a second, I think there's a bit more flexibility and a bit more consciousness that they can bring to how they use it and how they apply it. For those of us that are blessed to be intuitive first, we don't have that same luxury. For those that are intuitive second, or especially for those of us that are intuitive first, we've kind of always known that there's been something a little bit different, unique, maybe even we've thought of ourselves as weird, but not necessarily known what that is. I've got a quote here from Carl Jung on intuition, and the quote is, "I thought perhaps she was crazy, but she was only highly intuitive." And I think this quote really sums up what many of us intuitives have received as a message from the world. When we come out with our speculative, apparently non-evidence-based or non-provable speculations and ideas that, oh, you're crazy, you can't know that. A person that's intuitive is just going to be interested in and orientated towards different types of topics and ideas. From a young age, I was always interested in psychology. Long before I could name it, I wish someone had explained it and categorized for me what I was being drawn towards. But I knew that I would often find adult conversations more interesting as I would loiter around the edges when my parents' friends were around, just listening in on the conversations, and conversations which were quite idea based, and now I would think as, loosely around psychological topics. Growing up, both my father and mother were social workers, so there were some people orientated in this sort of direction in my world. I recognize now that that was my intuition being drawn to that and trying to learn and grow and develop. And I also recognize that my lack of interest in sports and quote unquote traditional boy activities was also my preference toward intuitive things, and therefore lack of emphasis on more sensory, kinesthetic type activities. Now, I was always climbing trees and doing kinesthetic things, but this wasn't fundamentally my focus. So to learn, maybe 5-6 years ago now that, I'm intuitive. I'm not broken. There's not something wrong with me. I'm not just unredeemable oddball. Well, maybe I am, but there's an explanation for being odd, and it's kind of a good one. It was really groundbreaking and really affirming. It helped me understand why I can get lost in my thoughts, why talking to certain people, they say overtly or at least imply that I'm complicating things too much. This is the part of me that's always been referred to as my analytical mind, or being very inquisitive and analytical. That's literally my intuition, looking for patterns and trying to make connections and trying to understand the full scope and the full breadth of whatever topic it is I'm aiming my intuition at that time. So to learn that, hey, only 1 in 4 people is like this, and to also realize that, actually 1 out of 4 people are like me, at least in the broad sense of intuition, was, really affirming and really clarifying. And as you probably picked up from the last episode with Caitlin and myself, really insightful for my relationships, for our marriage, but also for my relationships with others. It helped me understand why I find a lot of people boring or a lot of conversations boring, and yet always felt bad about this because I didn't specifically have any issue with those people or those conversations. And on the flip side, it started to explain to me why a lot of people lose interest with the topics I'm talking about and thinking about, or frankly just think they're weird and wonder why I can't just talk about quote unquote normal things. Actually, I say normal things. That's a comment that I had from a friend who is intuitive, and that was a feedback that he got from his brother, which he would just talk about normal things. Doesn't understand why he talks about all these weird things, why he's interested in all these weird things. So another quote here from Jung that I wanted to share is, intuition gives outlook and insight. It revels in the garden of magical possibilities as if they were real. Intuitives love to look at possibilities. They love to wonder what could be. They love to ask what if type questions. What if we perfect AI in the next 5 or 10 years? What if? How will that impact the world we live in? You'll find intuitives in philosophy classes. You'll find them in psychological studies. You find intuitives at a lot of the innovative, cutting-edge corners of society, such as in tech, or working in highly theoretical and conceptual type jobs. And there's plenty of actors and comedians and other media people that are intuitive also. Going back to myself for a moment, as I said before, it helped me understand not just myself but others and where their attention and focus was orientated. And what I've been able to do is let go of this impulse that I had, and I didn't realize what I was doing, to constantly and continuously pull everyone that I meet and interact with into a high-level conceptual conversation. Because when you're intuitive, you have this desire, and I'd even say need, for intuitive conversation, for the interactions and the back and forth that you get talking intuitive ideas with other people. But the thing is that a lot of sensors are frankly not really interested in this. Plenty are, so it's not a rule. What I now realize I was doing was overstepping the line of my agenda and what I wanted to do, and trying to pull other people into that place. And I know why I did this. It was coming out of an unmet need, a lack of intuitive conversation in my life. But now that I know this and I know how to conceptualize what's happening, I know where to go if I need an intuitive fix. Less and less I force my wife to listen to my intuitive ramblings. We still talk and discuss these things at length, but I know at certain moments on certain topics, it'll be a gift that I can give her to call up a friend and have that dialogue, or grab a coffee and have a chat. And it's also helped me to know how to speak and interact with people that are not primarily intuitive, to use their language, to meet them where they're at, and to see the beautiful and absolutely vital contribution that these people make to society. I get that I like concepts and ideas more than the average person, and that's okay. And I suppose even that's where producing this podcast comes in. I know there's others out there that are interested in these types of things, and so I'm doing this to have an outlet for my intuitive thoughts and ideas, but also to meet a need that I think is still rather unmet, and to hopefully create a community where intuitives feel welcome and affirmed and accepted. And obviously my podcast is not exclusively for intuitives, not at all. But being an intuitive lead in my personality, I know that what I'm on about is generally going to appeal to those type of folk. I love for other people to listen and engage in the conversation too, but it's also okay if they don't. So if you have tended to feel a bit weird or a bit different, or maybe you've just really enjoyed my podcast up till now, maybe you are intuitive. Maybe intuition is a big part of your personality and the way that you understand and interact with the world. And if you are wondering about this, feel free to pop on over to my Daniel Anear coaching Facebook page and send me a message. I also offer personality typing sessions, where over a couple of sessions I run through a series of questions to work out your best fit personality type. But I'll leave it there for today. This is most certainly a topic I'll be revisiting, hopefully even having some intuitive friends and colleagues of mine come on the show to talk about their own intuitive awakening and what this has all meant for them. So thanks for listening today, and I look forward to speaking with you next time on Convergently Speaking.